We're looking at the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 5. If you're somebody looking for an ultra premium device that has great performance, incredible build quality, awesome build materials, and is below $2,000, you really can't find anything better than this device. And also, you're tapping into the Samsung ecosystem, which makes communicating with all your different devices, if you're a big Samsung fanboy or fangirl, a really great fit. Now, one of the things that I want you to keep an eye out on in this video is making the right purchasing decision. There's a few different models available, some SKUs, and I want to make sure that you get the right model for your specific use case. That is the big takeaway from this Book 5 series from Samsung, whether it be the Book 5 Pro 360, the Book 5 360, the Book 4 Edge, right? There's a lot of Samsung models. So I want to take some time in this video to make sure you're choosing the right one. Now, first and foremost, though, we're going to dive into the build quality, usability, and check out the features of the laptop, and then we'll get into the performance and considerations on which model you should purchase. At any time, if you're curious about the exact pricing and availability, head down in the description below, click those links. If you do make a purchase, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. But of course, that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. Speaking of the Samsung ecosystem, if you're looking to check out the S25, right now they're giving away $50 for just signing up for the pre-order. So you could get $50 towards any purchase of a Samsung product. So definitely head down in the description below, click that link. If you want to go ahead and do the pre-order, you'll get an extra $50. Not a bad deal. And it doesn't cost anything to be a part of that early reserve. It's just free opportunity for some extra money. First of all, this is not the lightest laptop. It does have some weight to it. And that's because of this really durable, sturdy aluminum material. It's a bit of a thicker material. For me, there's something about a little bit of a heavier laptop that just exudes some confidence in the strength and durability of the chassis. Now, I know there's some people who want a very nice light on-the-go friendly laptop, and that's a whole nother category. I recently reviewed the ASUS ZenBook A14, and that is a super light laptop. It's absolutely insane. This has its own merit of having some nice weight to it. However, it is very thin. So if that's what you're going for, man, this really has you covered. The assembly of these laptops always blows me away. Really great assembly along the bottom cover. Everything fits together so nicely, but they never compromise for ports, being that it's such a thin device. For the Samsung Galaxy Book 5 Pro, you have HDMI, 2 USB Type-Cs, as well as a micro SD card reader, a USB-A, and a headphone jack. For the HDMI, it's HDMI 2.1, which supports up to an 8K monitor, as well as 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. So these are Thunderbolt 4, 40 gigs per second transfer speed on point. Now I'm gonna go open and close the laptop with one hand. Done easily with one hand, even though it is such a massive display, because that hinge is so nice and sturdy. It really has. Now, it does move the laptop around a little bit because it is a bit more on the firm side, but man, that's so nice. It just sits very well. Now, I will say there's a bit of screen bounce. You can see it does bounce a little bit, but it stops fairly quickly. So even if you're like moving around, it's not going to be an issue. The next thing is that this display is a touch screen, but it is not pen compatible. I repeat, no pen compatibility. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you want a pen compatible laptop, again, this gets me into making the right decision. You want to get either the Book 5 360 or the Book 5 Pro 360 or the Book 4 360 or so on and so forth. But the 360 is where you're going to get that pen compatibility without question. The next thing you want to take a look at is you want 14-inch or 16-inch. There's going to be a bit of a price difference there. The 16-inch starts out at $1449 with a 512 SSD, and then you can get a 1 terabyte SSD for $1649. However, I personally, if I'm going to buy this laptop, I'm going to upgrade to 32 gigs of RAM, which would set the price at $1749 with the 16-inch panel, 1 terabyte of storage, and 32 gigs of RAM. We have gotten to a point in life where we're doing so much multitasking as far as the applications we're using, and I just think 32 gigs of RAM is a great spot to be, especially if you're using this laptop as a creator, whether you're a video editor, using Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. 32 gigs of RAM is just such a good spot to be so you don't bottleneck your laptop. Now they do have a 14-inch model, which I absolutely love because I like a little bit smaller of a form factor personally, and that is also available in all the same spec, whether it be 512 with 16 or 1 terabyte with 16 or 1 terabyte with 32 gigs of RAM. So it's really nice to see that the models are all carrying the same spec. It just gives you a different screen size. Bam, awesome. Okay, remember, links are in the description below if you want to check out the actual live pricing, if they maybe have a sale on it right now or something. I don't know. Links in the description below. Okay, we're now in the interior of the laptop. We've covered that this is not a touchscreen. You want to go for the 360, but this panel is incredible. 3K AMOLED display, resolution of 2880 by 1800, 382 nits of screen brightness at 100% sRGB, 98% Adobe RGB, and 98% DCI-P3, all at a delta E of 0.53. 0.53. That is one of the lowest that I have personally seen. So if you're new to color gamut range is the range of colors that can be reproduced. The delta E is the accuracy at which they're reproduced. The lower the number, the higher the accuracy. 0.53 is fantastic. Now, in regards to battery life, this does have the second series of Intel Core Ultra, and let's talk about the specs of this specific model I have. We have the Intel Core Ultra 7256V, 32 gigs of RAM, and the 1 terabyte SSD. Now, the battery life that we're getting out of this laptop, you can see the results coming up on the screen. We're getting 18 hours and 21 minutes of productivity, 18 hours and 42 minutes of streaming video playback online, maybe like YouTube or something, 7 hours and 47 minutes of Photoshop battery life, and about 6 hours of video editing playback. So if we put a project into Premiere Pro, play it back on loop, that's how long the battery will last before going dead while video editing. This video is brought to you by the ASUS ProArt P16, the flagship creator laptop from ASUS that provides on-the-go workstation performance within a beautiful and durable military-tested all-aluminum chassis, outfitted with a pen-compatible 4K OLED Corning glass display that is durable and color accurate. It weighs 4 pounds and is just over a half an inch thick, capable of all-day battery life for productivity tasks, and fitted with the ASUS dial to streamline your workflow, providing access to your most commonly used tools. Equipped with the AMD Ryzen AI9 CPU, up to 64 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 4060 or 4070, this device is a powerhouse for architecture and 3D modeling work. And trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg when looking at what the ASUS ProArt P16 has to offer. Check out my full review content within the playlist linked in the YouTube cards above or in the description below. Thank you so much to ASUS ProArt for sponsoring this part of the video. This massive display has solid battery life and incredible color accuracy. Now let's go ahead and work our way into the device. Here we have the classic full-size keyboard from Samsung on their 16-inch models. We have the numpad on the right side, full-size shift keys, arrow keys available. So smooth, like a nice quiet dampened click. It's not a quiet keyboard, like it definitely has some noise to it, but it's not that loud clicky sound that some people don't like. I personally love a clicky keyboard, but just I know like when you're typing around other people, they're like, oh my gosh, the of a gaming keyboard is so loud. And so this is a nice kind of subdued sound. The trackpad is amazing. Now this is a manual click trackpad, glass manual click trackpad, super large trackpad, and the click can activate at about the kind of 1/3 spot down the trackpad. So keep that in mind. As you're up here, you'll be able to tap it for a click, but to actually activate the click, it's about 1/3 of the way down. Now, one thing that surprised me this year is they've gotten rid of the performance button on the keyboard. Now I can click function F1 and get into the settings and then go ahead and change the performance mode inside of the settings here. So we'll go just change it to quiet mode. But it's not like I can just click function and then scroll through my performance settings with a dedicated button. So that's one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, that button is not on the keyboard this iteration, because it's been on past iterations. And before we move on from the keyboard, here's a sample of the keyboard and trackpad so you can hear what they sound like for yourself. Here's a sample of the webcam so you can see it and hear it for yourself. This is the webcam on the Samsung Galaxy Book 5 Pro, and a little sample of the audio for you as well. Okay, now let's go ahead and check out the bottom of the laptop. This is where the speakers are located. Here's a sample of the speakers so you can hear what they sound like in use. I think what's blowing me away about these new devices that come with Intel Core Ultra is the fact that we can have really, really good battery life and still great performance and quiet thermals. So for this device, we saw a thermals of 54 to 64 degrees Celsius on the 4K export. That was on performance mode, and 42 to 44 decibels of fan noise on performance mode. It's quiet, it runs cool, and it gets great battery life and a solid export time. Talk about the export time in just a minute. So just wanted to point that out that, man, you've really got something incredible here. So it's thin, it's light, it's cool, it's got great battery life, it has an incredible screen, and it's all under $2,000. I mean, to me, this is like unheard of in the Windows category up until this point. And speaking of the battery life, in case I didn't mention earlier, this is a 76 watt hour battery that comes in the device. All right, as we pull off the bottom cover of the laptop, you can see we have the battery available to swap out and 2 M.2 slots. I did not expect this. Maybe I forgot from last year, or maybe this is new. Maybe you would know if you own the previous model. But one would have been great. They have 2 M.2 slots. Now, there is no opportunity to upgrade the RAM, just keep that in mind, but you have 2 upgradable M.2, so you can just go ahead and add a second one in on top of the one that already comes if you order the 1 terabyte version, throw in another 2 or 4 terabytes. It's right there for you. Dunzos. I mean, that's a fantastic upgrade path. And of course, we have our 2 fans to keep this unit nice and cool, as we saw, or as we will see, depending on when this is placed in the video. For the thermals, I always get more excited about these devices as I, tear them apart, look at them, turn them over, flip them up, flip them down. That's amazing for such a thin laptop. My goodness, 2 upgradable. Cheers to Samsung. What kind of performance are we getting out of this device? You can see in the simulated benchmarks, both Geekbench and Cinebench, you get solid performance. It is the 256V, so the 258V is going to edge it out a little bit, but we do have 32 gigs of RAM, which is a big advantage inside of, say, things like Photoshop. But just as far as the straight CPU benchmark tests of the simulated benchmarks, it kind of hits a little bit above the middle of the road, which is still solid for this device. Now, I care more about the real world benchmark. So let's go ahead and take a look at Photoshop. Inside of Photoshop, you can see we're scoring a 5,924. Completely respectable score. Okay, I wanna make a correction because earlier in the video, I said that I had the 32 gig model. I have this 16 gig model. My brain went on the fritz because I recommend the 32 gig model. So with this model, it has 16 gigs of RAM. If you have the 32 gigs of RAM, you're gonna get much more performance. You can see the Galaxy Book Pro 360, the 360 model I tested earlier this year came with 32 gigs of RAM, and that's why we're seeing an even better score inside of Photoshop. So keep that in mind. If you want that extra bump in Photoshop, definitely get the 32 gigs of RAM. This has 16. Okay, moving forward, let's go ahead and check out the export times. 1 minute and 4 seconds with 1080p export out of Premiere Pro. 4 minutes and 21 seconds, 4K export out of Premiere Pro. Really solid export times for this thin and light device with 16 gigs of RAM. Now moving on, if we want to do it on battery power, 6 minutes and 15 seconds, a little bit slower, and you can actually export a 6K 9-minute B-RAW for 30 minutes and 21 seconds. Pretty solid export time. Now moving on to playback, 4K playback, 0 drop frames. 6K playback, 6,945. Pretty good. I've seen some thin and light laptops do a little bit better, but for 6K on this thin and light device, if you were to upgrade to 32 gigs of RAM, it would have a better playback. Just keep that in mind. And then of course we have DaVinci Resolve. The 4K out of DaVinci Resolve is 6 minutes and 4 seconds. Punch for punch, I'm impressed with this device. For the price, build quality, thin and lightness, thermals, the display it comes with, the battery life, and really solid performance at 16 gigs of RAM. The one edit I would say is I would tell you to get 32 gigs of RAM if your budget allows, especially that it's soldered to the motherboard. You're not able to upgrade that post-purchase. Remember that links are in the description, and you can claim that $50 reserve if you go ahead and pre-order the S25 or the Ultra S or the SHIJK L-M-N-P, whatever model that you are looking into. Definitely check out the links in the description below, and click or tap the screen here for more videos to help with your buying decision. I'll see you in the next one.